Welcome, everyone, to Cinema A to B, a movie podcast with me, Alec and Ben. Today, we are going to be talking about the 2022 film, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, the Nic Cage vehicle that is now a huge meme. So, Ben, what's your thoughts, buddy?
I adore this movie, and I'm gonna have to walk back some comments I made when we did Tommy Boy. Because I said, they're not really making good comedies anymore, which in volume they're not. But occasionally something comes around that's an absolute riot. And in this case, it's this movie. I don't remember, did this get a theatrical run of any kind, or is this a streaming thing?
No, it did get a small theatrical run, but it was, but we're talking, I think it was in the wintertime. So it was, kind of basically set out like it was probably like February, January, March or something along those lines. So it was definitely not there for to make big bucks.
Yeah, because I didn't see this in a movie theater, and I kind of wish I had, just because I'm the kind of guy that just will laugh just relentlessly in a movie theater, and I don't care. And I found my laughter will free up other people to laugh. And I don't know why everybody's so uptight now in a movie theater when it comes to like comedy and laughing at stuff. I think I saw this by myself, it was streaming, and I finally decided, because I'd heard a little bit of buzz of you need to watch this, and it's something else. Buddy,
I'm going to agree with you. Like, I went in this, I do really like Nic Cage, but I was thinking like, the last decade of Nic Cage films, it's unfortunately feels like a money grab. There's been some good gems, but a lot of not great ones. And I was kind of going in this is he poking fun at himself, or is this going to be serious? And was blown away. Thoroughly enjoyed it. The chemistry between him and Pedro Pascal is worth the price of admission just by itself. Just their scenes, like that first third of the movie is worth it just by, if I didn't have the other two acts, done, just give it to me. That whole little bit of them talking about movies and kind of bonding is fantastic. So, and the movie is so meta that it just blows my mind. But yeah, it's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, this movie has a little something for everybody. I don't think you have to be the Nic Cage superfan to enjoy it and find it funny. But the more you know about the man, the funnier it gets. And the more nuggets tend to show up throughout. But yeah, you're right. The chemistry between these guys is just... The thing is, Nic Cage is a bizarre human being. And Pedro has basically admitted as much, but that doesn't mean they didn't get along. No. He's bizarre, he's weird, but he's very funny. They both are. And I like these movies where I can tell the leads are having an absolute blast doing it. Because unfortunately, that's just not the case with every movie. Some of these are really tough to make, and then other these are fun. The problem is, it seems like more often than not, a movie that's a lot of fun to make often ends up not being very good. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. But this is the exception to the rule, because they're having a blast, and then the movie is just a really funny, wild ride for audiences. And the thing is, I was expecting this movie to end up being really predictable, just as far as the story, and it really isn't. There's in a way, there's some twists and turns as far as, is this character who you really think they are? Yeah. And so but it doesn't lean on that. Like, this is not a movie that's leaning on this heavy narrative. Like, it's there to make you laugh. And it's effectively a love letter to peak Nic Cage, which is like pretty much 90s Nic Cage. Yeah. And
early 2000s a little bit, but definitely a lot of late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s callbacks. I mean, because the whole Nicky character, his younger self, is based off of that Wild at Heart character he played, or the interview he did with that on British television or whatever. He was like throwing money into the crowd, taking his shirt off, doing kicks. I'm like, and the best part about it was, like, when I first saw Nicky and he was like, Nic Cage is acting at him, I'm just thinking to myself, like, oh, he's going to do a bad impression of himself. And I feel like that's what he's going for. But it's so spot on to how he was when he was younger that I'm like, this is just him being him. Like, this is him at that interview. Like, he's not trying to do an impression of himself. It's comedy gold. It's such a fun film. Laura didn't like it actually at all. So she's also not a big Nic Cage fan, I believe. I mean, she watched it with me and, laughed at some parts and stuff, but definitely didn't walk away with it with the amount of joy that I had from it. So, but fun fact, Pedro Pascal is apparently, he said in interviews that he was a huge Nic Cage fan before this movie. Like, he watched all Nic Cage's movies, was super nervous, like working with him and meeting him because he was such a fan. And I was like, that's awesome. But then they still build that chemistry and to be able to do this. So like, some of that could just be Pedro Pascal kind of just nerding out, talking to Nic Cage.
He's admitted as much. I forget the interview where he basically said there's sections of this, there's no acting going on. Like, it's not, because he's much of a super fan as the character is. And so there's no acting there. And it's been a minute since I've seen this, a couple months. Mm-hmm. So not everything's as fresh in my mind, but it is on a technical level, like it's really well shot, and it's a very attractive movie as far as the locale, like the locations they're shooting at. It's fun. It's not only is it funny, it's aesthetically like it's a solid movie. So
yeah, so beautiful views. I mean, I think they're shooting in Croatia, if I remember correctly. Beautiful shots. I mean, there's nothing, I didn't watch it and go, that's a terrible shot. And I don't think this was a lot of money at all. Like, I didn't think they threw it didn't have a high budget.
I can't imagine it did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have budget on, readily available.
Yeah.
But you do save a lot of money shooting in Croatia.
Oh, it says about $30 million.
Okay.
Was the budget. So. And
it made its money back as far as its box office. And then.
Yes.
And so I think it's done well, because on the streaming and stuff, and then rental, I think it cleaned up pretty well. So. Yeah. Yeah, it's been profitable. I mean, this guy that directed this, he's now doing, I believe, the Beverly Hills Cop movie.
Yeah, the Axl Rose thing or whatever. And he didn't really have any, like, he had wrote for a TV show, and then had some movie that he did before this. And so this was like his true I guess not big thing, but because he had a movie with Zac Efron and Miles Teller and, oh my goodness.
That awkward moment.
Michael B. Jordan. Thank you.
Which I didn't see. I've not seen that.
No, neither
but he had that,
so.
and then he did like some episodes of this comedy show, Ghosted. But that was kind of it. And then you do this thing where you write specifically for, like, huge gamble to write this. And, it's going to be sink or swim on whether or not he's going to be able to, do it. Is he available? Does he want to do it?
Well, and he didn't. Like, he really was nervous about it. And actually, for a while, he wanted to play the Pedro Pascal role until Pedro Pascal got it. He didn't want to play himself. He wanted someone else. He thought, like, he even talks about how meta it would be if I played the Nic Cage superfan, instead of Nic Cage, So it was, I think, with the Tom Gormican, who directed it and also wrote it, in addition with someone else. But I know after writing the script and sitting down talking with him, that's when, like, Nic Cage was like, okay, you're not trying to make fun of me. This is done as a comedy, but not at my expense. More of, this is fun and kind of a little bit of, you're giving me a little bit of credit for what I have done in the past.
Oh yeah. So it's absolutely an homage to, the most successful part of his career. But to get him to write the script, it's like, or get him to read the script is a huge undertaking. And hats off to him for having the cojones to to get it done and say, you know, no matter what, I need to get Cage, I need to get this script in his hands because I believe in the project. And clearly the result is not a knock on Nic at all. I mean, like this, critics are like calling this like one of the best performances of his career. And
it's fantastic. Yeah. Well, and it's now, you know, the movie has scenes that are now memes or, you know, and GIFs that are everywhere. Like people using it all the time of their little car ride scene. It's
that thing like, fills my feed daily. and guess what? I always freaking watch it. Because the cut to Pedro with that goofy ass smile on his face gets me every single time.
I don't care. Like, yeah, just give it to me. Just like, this is fantastic. This was a lot of fun. I mean, even the side characters like Tiffany Haddish and the other agent whose name escapes me at the moment, they were a lot of fun. The just kind of his interplay with his daughter and him trying to, you know, teach his daughter film or like, but you really wanted to watch, you know, The Castle of Dr. Caligari, you know, or whatever, you know, and all these different things. Like it felt so light, but yet I could also be believable. Like, cause that is a, you know, movie that everyone touts, but how many people have actually seen it?
Is this the movie with the Paddington?
Yes, this is the movie with the Paddington. He's like, because I love it because it's this cut of just to quickly Nic Cage, and he goes, just tell me, just finally own up to it. What is your third favorite movie? And that's when Pedro's like, Paddington 2. just great, just great. Like,
yeah,
it makes me laugh. This was.
I couldn't quite remember it. Like I said, it's been a few months. I was like, I swear there's a Paddington 2 reference in this movie that just had me crying. And I do recall laughing hard enough that I think I had tears in my eyes during watching this. And that doesn't happen very often.
But going back to laughing, I do want to say, as someone who has watched a lot of movies with you, I do appreciate your laughter because it makes me also want to laugh at movies a lot harder than I normally do, just because of you just going full bore whenever something you find funny, and I appreciate it. So thanks for your laughter and bringing joy.
Oh,
to
no
theaters.
problem. I've seen some movies in my day where I've laughed at some things that I probably shouldn't have, and I just don't care. I don't care. I'm paying more than I've ever paid before. And if I want to laugh, I'm going to laugh. But yeah, I totally would have loved a theatrical on this just for the, just to laugh with some other people. It looks like,
digging a little bit deeper, and I should have done this beforehand, it looks like it did actually get released in April of 2022 for a theatrical release. So not trying not to read too deeply into it while we're actually doing this.
Yeah, and I think they had a hard time marketing this movie.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, how do you do
now?
How do you do it?
Yeah.
How do you do it properly? You know, and convince people that this is worth going to see. And I think they really struggled with that. And the fact that it caught on fire in the streaming space doesn't surprise me.
Mm-hmm. No. I mean, when you have a ton of movies coming out already in that April timeframe, you know, we're starting to get up into summer blockbuster stuff, and you know, the big budget movies really do. The spectacle movies get all kind of the pull and garner the interest from people who want to spend that $15, $20 a ticket to go see in the theaters. What's the likelihood you're going to go really see the unbearable weight of massive talent, which looks like Nic Cage just doing a movie about his life? And how interesting is that? Especially since, I mean, no offense to Nic Cage, but he hasn't exactly been relevant for the last decade. So
no, he's been known for being in massive real estate debt from buying castles and then having to do B and C and D level movies to pay the bill. He's been very transparent about that as of late. Like he's not shied about it. He's like, hey, I took some bad advice thinking that these would be investment properties, and they weren't. And I saddled myself with debt, and I did what I needed to do to dig out of it. And so I've got a lot of respect for the guy for like basically damaging his career to pay the debt. I respect that. It's like, I made the mistake, and I'm going to have to use my best skill available to make money to pay for this mistake. And that's what he's done. And fortunately, now we're in a different era, clearly, of entertainment, where there was a time when this would absolutely have destroyed your career. And and for a time, I think it did, but we're kind of well past that with streaming, and people are looking for a comeback now. Like, I think that's kind of the thing with America, right? Is we love to build people up, and then we love to tear them down, and then we love to build them back up again. So like it's a vicious cycle, and I feel like he's, kind of on the upswing. And he's not going to be fully back just because he's not the young man anymore that can star in these action films that he like built his career on in the 90s with, The Rock and Face Off and Con Air. Yeah. He's not that age anymore, but this is special.
Just, it kind of feels like a little bit of also Nic Cage's love letter to, or maybe not Nic Cage's, but the writer's love letter to Hollywood, kind of talking a lot about little snippets here and there. I really enjoyed the beginning part where Nic Cage came on way too strong to the director. The director was like, I'm just going to give it to you. He's like, no, I'll read. And like, then he talks himself out of the part. And I'm like, that feels very, very real. Like that has happened multiple times to people of like, they're just like, no, I'll read, I'll do it. And then the director's like, oh my goodness, you just saved me a lot of money because you're terrible. Like, this is not how I thought it was going to be. Yeah,
it's super accurate. So, I mean, people like talk themselves out of giving like a good performance during an audition all the time. Because you stand out there and you hear the other guy or the other gal doing it the way that you were going to do it. And then you're like, well, now I can't do that. Like, I can't do that now. It's not going to work, right?
Yep. Well, they've already heard it. Might as well go with that guy as opposed to me.
Yeah. What a mind game.
It does jump genres a little bit, right? So it's not 100% comedy, but I think this is the closest you're going to get to 100% comedy in this era, where everything is kind of a little bit of everything or a little bit multiple stuff. So you're not, so it's definitely not like the same kind of vein as Tommy Boy of just straight, here's a little story, here's some comedy, but that is kind of a lot of it is just let's go enjoy ourselves and have fun.
Yeah, this probably has more in common, like as far as the narrative where it kind of sits in to something like maybe like 21 Jump Street with Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill, which is a pretty funny movie. Not as funny as this. I think this is a much better comedy, which just goes to show there's space for this buddy cop or this is like a non-cop buddy cop movie is kind of the way it feels. Cause it still involves law enforcement and stuff, but they don't rely on the narrative to like push it forward. Like it's just in the background. It's just the setup to get these two characters together, really.
And then they just, once they're together, it just kind of goes like, like everything else becomes so ancillary. It's just them kind of going through life and figuring things out.
I have to admit that before I started watching this, I did not have high expectations because I was of the opinion that Pedro Pascal was starting to kind of have overexposure in Hollywood. And I still kind of think that a little bit. But I understand his reasoning. This is a guy that achieved success much later. And so it's like, you kind of have to make hay while you can. Like while you're in demand, you just need to take the roles and not worry about how close stuff gets released. But I was kind of worried about that. I was like, oh, this guy's in everything. How good is this going to be? How good is his performance actually going to be? Is he going to actually offer me anything different than he normally does? And he really did. He really did. He feels like a completely different character. He doesn't feel like anything he gave in, I first watched him in Narcos. He didn't feel like that character. He doesn't feel like
The Last of
Mandalorian,
Us,
Last of Us. Yeah. Like
Game of Thrones.
Yeah. He's very, very versatile. And now he's shown the comedy angle, which, as we've discussed before, isn't the easiest thing to.
And he's good at it too. Like he's got good pacing. He's got good timing. I mean, obviously some of that's a lot easier when you're on set because you can edit some of that down, but a lot of those shots are just single shots of him kind of delivering those lines. And it's just like,
and you didn't overplay his hand.
Just great. No,
He's working with a good script, and part of him is a real super fan of Cage anyway. So I think he just leaned on that and was like, this is how I'm going to play it. And it comes off very natural and very endearing.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is
so, and to our listeners and stuff like that. And I know it's very true what Pedro Pascal is doing, but a lot of times too, keep in mind that a lot of these movies were shot 2, 3, 4 years ago. This one not being one of this was one of the early movies that got shot after the pandemic hit or whatever. But you may have done a movie in 2018 that doesn't really come out till 2021, or 2022, and these studios are keeping these movies in the vault or whatever until they see a good time, and they see, oh, Pedro Pascal is trending. Let's release our Pedro Pascal vehicle or the movie he's in, ride that wave. And so the actor himself is trying to space these out. But then the studios are like, we're going to cash in and you're going to get overexposed. And so they may not have that much control over it. They may think they're doing the right thing of spacing these stuff out, but the release schedule gets changed. And then it's, oh, okay, well, I'm everywhere. So this is my time. Yeah. But some of that may be true in Pedro's case. The other is very true of what you're saying. I mean, this is his moment. He is the it guy for a lot of these different projects. Get in while the getting's good before you crest into too old or you're, playing smaller parts. Like he's just at that age where he's old enough to still be, he's young enough, to still kind of fit these action roles or to fit these, romance roles or these more interesting roles and not get relegated to just the father or the grandfather. But he is definitely pushing that direction for, a very youthful Hollywood.
Yeah, he's not yet 50. He's several years away from turning 50. So yeah, he does. He has to take advantage. And fortunately, what he gives you is something different each time. So the overexposure is less of a problem with him versus someone like The Rock, who just gives pretty much the same performance. So that helps. But it's still a danger. And I've read about it and it's been talked about before. And you're right. Some of that can be very much out of your control. So I don't know. I appreciate these guys that did not achieve success early and grinded and obviously the guy must be really fun to work with because you don't just get cast in this stuff a bunch. If you can be talented, but if you're a pain in the butt, it wouldn't have lasted this long. Like they wouldn't be continuing to put him in things. And I know there's been there was some bad press around him with The Mandalorian with like how much time he actually wanted to spend in the suit and whatnot. But generally what I've heard is that he's good to work with. And so that's kind of an exception, I think, that role.
And if I remember reading those articles about him in the Mandalorian suit, it was less about like, there wasn't a whole lot of like, he was demanding he didn't want to be in the suit. It was more of like, they used other people. And I think a lot of it too, was he had other shooting conflicts. And so with that role, the nice thing is that they don't actually need him in the suit. And so they could still shoot without him and just have him dub in his lines. Right. And so I don't know if it was him not wanting, again, this is from what I've read, this is the feeling I got it was less about him not wanting to be in the suit and more about just sometimes the shooting schedules didn't work very well. So
do you have any parting words of wisdom when it comes to the unbearable weight of massive talent?
I would say if you haven't seen this movie, see it just so you can laugh and enjoy yourself. If you have any enjoyment of Nic Cage, see it. Now, you will see Nic Cage with a K, Nic Cage, because in the movie he plays N-I-C-K Nic Cage as opposed to his real life persona of N-I-C Nic Cage. But it's just a lot of fun, a lot of tongue-in-cheek references, a lot of movie references to Nic Cage stuff, and just a good little ride. So
yeah.
It's
good fun. Don't see it by yourself. Get a group, or at least one other person.
Totally does not take itself too seriously. Doesn't try to be anything more than what it actually is.
Yeah, and we appreciate these movies that know exactly what space to operate within and don't try to do too much. And this one's good. This one's good. I need to watch this one again. And yeah, we love talking about these movies and bringing you something different each and every week. And we hope you see this one, Unbearable Weight. And if you've already seen it, we'd love to hear your thoughts on it. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, everybody.